Good evening, everyone. We are having our joint presentation together with Kati on our joint research on Finnic runo songs. Kati is moving slides. Yeah.
Just tell me when you want.
Yeah. For those of you who do not know anything about Finnic, like common oral poetry tradition, which we call runosong or regilaul in Estonian, or Kalevala-like poetry from the Finnish epic Kalevala. It is spread in different in large area in Finland, Estonia, and the people nearby us. And it shares a similar poetic meter, which has local differences. And the main feature is also the persistent use of alliteration and parallelism. And it has no strophes, no rhymes, so you can extend the songs as long as you want or have feeling to. And the tradition has been estimated to be evolved some 2,000 years ago. This is a rough estimation, but it is believed to be emerged before the final divergence of Finnic languages and peoples. And you see here the small example, but that was already in previous slide. Here you see the map of Finnic languages, which pretty much also means the area of the tradition we are talking about. There are no recorded runo songs in Veps and Livonian languages. Veps is easternmost red area, and Livonian is lilac spot in Latvia. It has been spread in more larger area, but it has in recent centuries it has the area is diminished as well as population. And on the map you cannot see properly, but there are multilingual regions, especially in Ingria. In the same region there are living Baltic people, Ingrian or Isorian people, and Ingrian Finns. And it is not always easy to say from which language or tradition the folk songs come. And what has led us to collaborate in this field? Of course, we share the tradition, and we know that there are a lot of common motifs or formula of Estonian and Finnish and Karelian and Ingrian songs, but there has been, and this has been a central genre in the folkloristics in Estonia as well in Finland, but we actually have no good overview, or we do not know what is common, what is different in different areas, because there are so many texts. There are more than 200,000 texts collected into our archives and in different languages and dialects, and it is, yeah, people say that human brain has no limits, but in fact it is impossible to work through and analyze all of this. with soul human brain. Now we can move on. And in the following speech, we are first introducing our projects, then our data set, then interfaces and methods behind, and then we show some examples of results that we have already obtained during this intense collaboration. And then we tell a little bit about what we are at currently, and then discuss the maintenance of infrastructure. And projects, there is Estonian project funded by Estonian Research Council about that is focusing on folkloric variation. And there is a project, Filter project, funded by Finnish Academy of Finland, that focuses on various topics you can read here, but another project, the Finnish project, is much more diverse in terms of it includes Estonians and Finns, but Kati will talk about it later, so I will not spoil her speech, her part. But I drew the small map of our people in Estonian project, and maybe you know some names, so you see familiar names, or maybe yourself if you are here. In the upper side, you see there are kind of already like a bunch of older researchers who have been working at the Renaissance Researcher already for longer time. And in the down part, there are lots of students, and there also are 2 Ukrainian colleagues who are going to study Ukrainian folk songs in parallel to Estonian ones. And in the left side, there are people who are dealing more with databases, and in green part, there are people who are dealing more with melodies, and there you see also there are some more independent researchers on the right side who are not who have a little bit different fields of research, maybe more towards religious studies, and Ado Lintrop does also Finno-Ugric studies, and so that was it.
First, I just want to say that thank you for inviting us. This is a great series that you are having here, and it's great to be here talking with you. So we are having this Estonian project and then this Finnish project, which is actually kind of international collaboration project. We have 2 Estonian folklorists, Mari and Liina Saarlo, and then 2 Finnish ones, myself and Jukka Saarinen, and then 2 computational scientists, Maciej Janitski and Eetu Mäkelä. And here you also have our blog address. We are not kind of actually making any blog posts, but that's where we put all the publications and such. So what is kind of essential in this project is that this is kind of close collaboration project. And this also means that we need to discuss and explain quite a lot to one another. We have folklorists who know different parts of the data really well, and that helps a lot as we are trying to find some computational tools and means to access this whole data of Finnic oral poetry. So it helps that there are all kinds of previous research and also people ourselves, and then also colleagues around who know the data well. We are trying to create kind of combination of qualitative and quantitative methods, so kind of combine close and distant reading. And for us as folklorists, it's usually quite important to be able to go easily from these wide computational views to the level of individual texts, so that we know what is actually happening at the level of the data, and what we are missing or misinterpreting if we are only looking at those computational views. Now, I think our situation is somewhat privileged. As Mari said, these runo songs have been documented and curated and published and digitized to a much greater degree than any other genres in Estonia or in Finland. And there is also lots of manual research to compare with. Mari, do you want to talk about this one?
Yes, it may be evident, but we have for this our research or joint research, we have joined several previous databases or data collections into one data set. We call it filter database, and it includes material from various genres, epic and narrative songs, lyric songs, ritual songs. At least in Estonian case, proverbs and riddles are excluded, but I don't know what about Finnish. Probably they occur occasionally. And just to give you a reference of the time frame, it is mainly recorded in 19th and 20th centuries, or first half of 20th century. And altogether there are some 250,000 texts. And of course, the collection density is different. There are also different genres in different shares in various regions. For example, in Estonia, wedding songs are one of the most prominent genres that has been preserved for a longer time than other songs because it is related with customs. But in Finland, there are almost no wedding songs. So the data can have many different like focuses in different regions. So also there is a problem. We have different type indices for this material in Finland and in Estonia. And the Estonian type index is not is work in progress, so it is not finalized. And we tried to get it made quicker with the help of this the research done in this project. So to use computational tools, but this is not done yet. And there is significant linguistic variation. In addition to languages and dialects, there is also orthographic variation, and also the language of runo songs is not a standard language, but it is a specific register of poetic language that, at least in Estonian part, contains a lot of archaic words, word forms, and Yeah, and this filter database contains Estonian chromosome database that is still work in progress. We continuously add the data into the database, but like maybe 2/3 of the chromosomes have been already inserted into database, and this is the oldest part. We are now working with the newer layers of Estonian tradition, and it includes Finnish public database, which comes from huge book series, Suomen kansan vanhat runot. And there is also a data set of unpublished poems that were considered as not suitable for this book series for one or another reason. And also we have added some literary works, and we plan to go on with this direction also. It was easy to insert Kalevala and Kalevipoeg because the texts were already digitized, but we are going on with the 19th century folk song publications and other materials. Kati, do you want to talk about that, or should I?
I can take this one. Yeah, here you can see the kind of general overview of our data on the map. So the first map is the collection density by parishes. As you see, it's not kind of equal here. And then on the other side, you can see the average length of poems. So this roughly corresponds to the other map. So the poems were mostly recorded from those places where they had kind of richest song tradition and longest poems as well. There are all kinds of differences in local singing cultures. Collectors' interests were different in across the different regions. In the data, we also have, well, as you always have, all kinds of issues. Uncertain and missing dates and places, all kinds of duplicates, fragments, even reconstructions. So it's quite tricky as a data. And at the moment, what we are working on, we basically have 4 different kinds of tools. We are going to talk to you today a little bit. SQL database for queries and further processing then and analysis with R and other tools. Then we have search interface Octavo for metadata and text queries. Similarity recognition interface Runoregi, which is something I'm quite excited about. This is done by Maciej Janicki. And then also visualizations apps. So we are working with map projections and poem type distributions and such. Mari, you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I know. In previous times, we as the folklorists thought that it should be sufficient to have a database interface, like web interface, and this they should have sufficient. This should give researchers sufficient possibilities to find from database the information they need. In Estonian database interface, we also have a map application, but we still lack the possibility to do detailed queries on specific words or collocations or regional distribution. And but during this filter project, when we joined our databases and got actually the access to the raw proper database, then it turned out it is really combined with further data processing with R. It is really powerful like combination how to get your research answers to your research questions. So we have been starting to learn SQL queries. We have been starting to learn how to process those results we query with R with the text analysis packages and to draw graphs and maps with it. And also to how to process the data so it gets handy for other applications. For example, for drawing networks with Jeffy. Here you see the core of the database. As usual, there are different tables and connections between tables. And then a network of Western Estonian folk singers, and in terms of which song types they are using, and they cluster together by their parishes. Parishes are colored in different colors, so you see the singers from the same parish use the same content, the songs with same content. A nice visualization. And the other one is one of our recent seminars. We tried to query the terms of sadness in Finnic Roma songs. And here we got the result that it's relative proportion of sadness related terms, or actually verse lines by counties. And here you see the Ingria and Southern Karelia form kind of sadness center in our tradition. Just 2 examples.
Then the other tools here, just to show you quickly, this is a search interface Octava by Eetu Mäkelä. It's quite flexible for text and metadata queries, and it also kind of provides links to some other interfaces. And you can do first searches in this kind of this search interface, and then apply the same searches also to visualization app. And what I really like here is that you can also choose the amount of metadata that you want to see in the results, and also the amount of poems. How many lines do you want to see in between or next to the actual words or phrases or lines you are looking for? So it's quite nice one. But there are also among us, there is kind of difference in kind of who wants to use more these SQL queries, and who wants to use more this kind of maybe more simple interfaces. Now, another thing that we have been working on is how to recognize similarity in our data. We have these type indices, but as Mari told, they are not they are more like something in progress, and also move at the level of poem types, sometimes motifs. There is a huge amount of variation in the data, how can you find similar verses? And here we have one kind of explorative solution. Maciej Janicki has been trying different kinds of computational models. And at the moment we have this interface, which is like explorative demo interface to give access to some of these calculations. It's based on character bigram vectors and algorithmic clustering of these. And it recognized similar verses, passages, and texts, starting from individual verses and then proceeding to longer texts. Of course, as we know as folklorists, there are all kinds of things that affect what is actually recognized. So if the content is similar, it's easier to find kind of bigger or wider sequences. Then we also have all kinds of local verse types, so that the same story may be told with quite different verses. And also if people are using different relative languages, it's often more difficult to get over these linguistic borders. What Runoreki recognizes well are regional and local variants, singer, family, or village traditions, and also literary influences, and also duplicates in our data. I have been quite surprised sometimes how well it works there. In the picture, you can see one example of set of quite similar but yet different verses that are recognized to be somewhat similar and then clustered to with algorithm to different clusters. What we have in the interface are different views, and as I said, this is quite explorative. So we have all kinds of things at the moment, just trying what might work, what might be useful for folklorists, and this is going to be developed further later. So this is kind of basic view for each poem in our data. There is a kind of page where you have the metadata, and then not actually themes, but the titles in the type index, and then a set of similar poems that have been recognized computationally, and then after these the text proper. And if you look at the text proper, there are different options. You can click the shared verses matrix open. This is a view I like quite a lot. All those colored squares correspond to different texts in our data. So these are the most similar poems to this one text, represented as columns of squares. So if there has been or if similar verses have been recognized in other poems, each kind of similarity is marked by a colored square. This poem I am showing you, it's a Vienna Karelian wedding poem, and it's kind of quite local, and it's very stable. We also have more varying poem types in the data, and actually Jukka Saarinen is currently making a kind of deeper analysis of this, these kinds of wedding songs, which tend to be quite stable. But yet, at the end of the poem, you can see that there are almost no correspondences. So this is a song that was usually performed as the first song of the weddings. And at the end of this particular text, the singer has been continuing with the theme of kind of asking for money, for a wage. And usually this was not at the beginning of the weddings, but just later on. But in this one text, it is here. And this is why these poems that share most of the verses with this one usually do not contain this last theme, but it appears elsewhere. And And then on the left side of the poem, you have kind of column of blue squares. And from these squares, you can get into the verse clusters of individual verses. So which verses are recognized as similar in our data? Here is one example of the first verse. On the left, you can see the beginning of the kind of set of similar verses that have been recognized for this verse with some metadata. But well, this specific cluster is quite even. So there are verses like Lenti kokko koilta ilmoin, or Lenti kokko koilta ilman, with really small differences, but then something also with some word level changes. Tuli kokko koilta ilman. In many cases, you also have some verses included that actually are not exactly the same verse. They might share half of the verse formula or some alliterative pattern. And often it's also so that what is kind of recognized automatically belongs to some local tradition. So if you have different, quite similar but different verse types, relative verse types, or similar verses in different languages, they often tend to appear in nearby clusters. So in Runoreki, we also have this option in the middle to look at the neighboring verse clusters. We have this Lenti kokko koilta ilman, and then some other verse types that are recognized to be more, well, not exactly similar, but to have some similarities with this one. Now, as I said, one cluster may also contain quite different verse types. So the first case on the left here is that basically someone did get angry, and the someone can be named Unto, or just somebody did get angry, or the smith did get angry. So if you change one word, sometimes all these end up to the same cluster. And then there are some alliterative and poetic patterns, such as when there are verses where someone is singing something or singing a song, you usually get all kinds of different verses that actually don't have anything else in common except that someone is singing there. Here you can also look for similar passages. So take a longer section of poem, and also to look at the context around it. And then the interface recognizes also similar poems. And you can just look at these one by one to click those poems open, or you can look at the dendrogram that kind of sorts a set of similar poems, which are the most similar, and then you can align these poems next to each other to see what is recognized as similar. But as I said, not everything is recognized, and something is sometimes also kind of misrecognized.
Yeah, the Runoreki is really powerful environment, and in addition, what Kati said already, I have to add that there are different options, different versions, how to cluster methods, how to cluster actually the lines, and some are more loose and some are more tight, and that's really wonderful explorative environment. But in addition to that, we have, and of course, all those data where the similarity calculations and assessments in Runoreki are based are also accessible for us through this SQL database. So we do not have to use only Runoregi, but if we want to look deeper or something specific, we can also use SQL queries for clusters and different similarities. But we have also, along with this Runoregi interface, we have a filter visualizations interface, which is also kind of work in progress. But today we decided to share the address with you so you can explore yourself what is possible and what is not. It has no guidelines, so you have just to browse around, but it has the possibilities to download various visualizations along with the data. And for example, there are various possibilities to query to get maps. First, there are already like ready-made maps with basic statistics about our database, but you can query word frequencies. And also what I use most is you can query relative word frequencies. And here the maps here are a good example of that. It is the query does not mean you have to have one specific word form only, but you can use this regex syntax for querying. So here in the maps you see two basic terms denoting mother in Finnic songs, and you see that it divides the area into two, and the word äiti in Finnish and eit in Estonia comes from Germanic languages, as well ema or ima in South Estonian comes from Finno-Ugric languages. So it's a very nice and like very clear distribution view. If we would just query the absolute frequencies, then the collection density would play a huge role, and this is not always informative. And also we can map very handily the spread of verse clusters, song types, song clusters. And there is also an option. This is all very fresh. All this interface is very fresh, but it develops all the time. And now we have, or Maciej Janicki has now recently completed kind of more stable version of that. And the very recent option is to just display only Estonia or only Finnish, Finland, Karelia, and Ingria, which is also very handy if you want to publish the map for only Estonian material, for example. And there are also various previews. Kati already showed one. And different, some plots, also timeline, graphs. I'm sure that they're coming more, and if we ask our colleagues, then we get what we want. But in addition to already prepared queries, this is also an easy access to the whole database. You can insert also custom Octavo queries or custom SQL queries and get the references to it for sharing and for publishing also. So it's easy way to share your results also. Now, what next?
Just one example of kind of how to put those old and also works in progress poem type indices onto the map. It's quite, we still have to work with this kind of how to overcome this national border between Estonian and Finnish datasets and the poem type indices, because they do not correspond. And also what actually was maybe a little bit surprise for us was that it was and it is more difficult to cross the border between Southern Finnic, so mostly Estonian, and Northern Finnic, so Finnish, Karelian, and Ingrian languages. We have kind of similar poem types, we have very similar verses, individual verses, but the languages and maybe also the traditions are different in such a way that it's difficult to recognize similarities computationally here. Here is another example, just having the one verse cluster on the map, and then looking at what kinds of poem types get attached to this set of poems relating to one verse type. And then on the right, example of formula query on the map, so it's easy to see that it's you get more results with flexible formula or collocation query than what you get with more fixed poem type, where you also can have verse type, where you can also have quite similar verses in nearby clusters and not in only one.
And now here we have reached the section of introducing some of our research results. It has been really great to have, according to me, to have the possibility to get the overview somehow of the whole tradition, and what are the regions, how the regions depict itself in the data. And I myself have been studying Estonian Rüno song meter previously already, and now the data gave us the possibility to do the research on the whole material. Computer-aided metrical analysis, well, it is possible, but it is not precise. So you get every kind of errors, and from my previous work, I remember that I had to control some cases. For example, the compound words give not correct results, and there are different ways to syllabify the words and so on. But if we apply the same methods to the whole material, then we also get comparable results. And if there is such a huge amount of material, the errors maybe do not play such a huge role. So we gave it a try. We actually, our computer scientist friends performed the rough syllabification of the whole corpus. And here the maps Yeah, here the maps, first map you see is the average number of syllables per word. So you see in the yellow area, there are longer words in runa songs, and in blue area, the words are shorter. So we see the area divides roughly, maybe into two, like Estonia and Western Finland on the one side, and on the other side, Karelia, and there is also in between some like, how to say, intermediate versions of lengths. But the other map shows the metrical features based on this rough syllabification. It shows the share of verse lines typical to classical Kalevala meter, which is considered as the main meter in Finnic runa songs. And already in Estonian case, I succeeded to show that the meter is going into more accentual, and here we see that again in yellow area there are songs that contain more verses with the verse lines typical to quantitative meter, and this blue area contains more verse lines typical to accentual meter. So that's really a new knowledge for me, at least. Maybe Kati already knew that beforehand, but how some kind of idea how the meter in this Finnish, Karelian and Ingrian part might be distributed or evolved. And the next is also I tried to use the whole material to find out what are the linguistic regions in runa song language. Because as I said, runa song language is a slightly different register of language, not always like similar to spoken language. And based on word form frequencies, I found out 5 regions, and it was there was a clear-cut border between southern and northern Estonian. But on the other hand, there was also a weirdly clear border in the middle of southern Karelia, Karelian, how do you call it? Karelian, yeah, where there is a part of population has been Ingrian and part of it has been Finnish, and we actually do not know which language the songs use, but here we see at least a clear regional border between eastern and western part of this small area. And what next? Oh, again.
Again, it's a kind of last slide, just to give you a short idea what we are dealing with right now. So kind of there are all kinds of things with evaluating and developing the methods that we do have. I am kind of, I think the folklorist side of our project is kind of struggling with kind of how to make the computational scientists understand and how to explain what we already know about all kinds of recurrent patterns that we have in oral tradition and in oral poetry, especially, and how could we deal with that computationally? How could we analyze and visualize it in more efficient ways? There is quite a lot of work to do with evaluating the methods that we already do have, kind of what kinds of similarities do we found and what we are not finding with our present tools. And also, for example, with mapping, there is quite a lot of things to do. There are issues with the data, not everything is projected correctly to the map yet. And we have also been thinking and been suggested that heat maps might work also better, because as you saw in the maps, we have very, very big parishes, and visually they look like more important, and those smallest parishes are really small. Then all kinds of big research question, what kinds of variation do we actually have in the corpus, and what do we find with computational means? What kinds of other regional similarities and differences do we have? Now you saw something about the poetic meter and language. What else can we get out of there? And this Runoregi interface and the computation on the background also seems quite promising in terms of understanding oral relationships. So it recognizes well these types of similarities.
If I may add here, we just recently had a seminar, our project seminar, and as this filter project seminar. And as the title of filter project, the first element is formulaic intertextuality. And that's where we focused in our seminar. So we, as we already have been telling, there is a typology, but that is not really reliable and not ready-made. But we came up with the idea of kind of computational song types and try to detect this like clusters of songs based on similarity. What was already in Runoregi, but then we started to explore also we are planning to, for example, compare the computational song types to the already detected by folklorists song types. But for example, what we wanted to find was stereotypic verse lines that have been used in different song types. And it was possible just to query from the database based on all these similarity calculations. So that stereotypical verse lines are verse lines that occur in possibly many different song clusters. And also there are verse lines that are typical to a specific song type or theme. Those ones that occur only in one specific song cluster. So it is really interesting and mind-blowing what we couldn't have expected before we started this project.
This is actually something I love here, that kind of I get surprised all the time. There are things that I didn't know that are in our data or in this oral tradition, and then those just kind of pop up with different kinds of computational experiments. But I think, Mari, and that if we are going to have some discussion, we would love to have your comments and ideas. So we maybe will be...
Yeah, we skipped now the problem of data and infrastructure. We all the time think of how to maintain the all those wonderful tools also after the project has ended, and try to establish kind of how to say jätkusuutlikkus.
Continuity. That's simple.
Continuity, yes. And yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.